All right. Hi, everyone. How are y'all? Good. How are you? Good. Try not to be blinded. My name is Mallory Watson. I am Conductor's marketing and outreach coordinator. We're excited to see you all here today. I see a lot of familiar faces, so we're excited that you're coming back to all these workshops. We are with Conductor, and we offer no-cost resources to small business owners, entrepreneurs, and leaders in Central Arkansas. So we offer workshops like today. We offer consultations with our team. We have an SME network for even more resources if you want to book a consult. We have pitch competitions and networking events, all at no cost. We are located at the Arnold Innovation Center in downtown Conway. This starts at $25 a month. Conway Corporation gifted us this building, and it's just an incredible space for entrepreneurs to work and collaborate and network with other entrepreneurs. So in front of you, I'm sure if you've heard this still before, but we have an event coming up on campus that we are hosting for incoming juniors, seniors, and graduate students. This is a healthcare innovation sprint. You can read all about it here, QR code to our website where you can learn more and apply and watch a video. But essentially, this is a 4-day immersive boot camp week that we host here. And it's for healthcare problem solving, entrepreneurship. If you're interested in any of those things, we have our students identify problems in healthcare, and you spend the week trying to come up with solutions for those. And so it is completely expenses paid. We cover your food, lodging you can get here on campus, and then for the winning team after our demo day, the winning team gets a cash prize. So if you're just looking for a resume builder, some cash, or you are interested in entrepreneurship or healthcare long term, you want to network with some awesome mentors like Jeff and Grace and other people that we have involved, it's a really awesome program. So if you have questions for us about our services, we're Healthcare Innovation Sprint. Please let one of our team members know after, or shoot us an email. But I will let Jeff kick it off. He is going to talk about leadership and building a culture of excellence. We have an awesome team at Conductor, and that is part of what he has built for us and created, environment-wise. And I'll let him talk more about his background. But you guys can use more out of close.
Graduated May, and you want to kind of finish the year with a bang and want to join our health sciences entrepreneurship, our healthcare innovation sprint. We used to call it the health sciences entrepreneurship boot camp. It's now called an innovation sprint. We'd love to have you even if you graduate in May. So let's talk a little bit about leadership and building a culture of excellence. My name is Jeff Standridge. I serve as managing director of the Conductor and of Innovation Junkie. Innovation Junkie is a more of a larger company consulting firm. So we have the work that we do as the Conductor with entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs, small business owners up to a certain level is funded by third-party sources. We have a number of larger companies. Arkansas Children's Hospital is one of our first clients. We've worked with the headquarters of Arvest Bank. We've worked with a division of Walmart and others. And they come to us and don't qualify for those services. And so Innovation Junkie is the mechanism by which we work with them. And then also a managing director of Cadron Capital Partners, which actually is a venture investing fund that we're on our second fund as Cadron Capital Partners. We've made about 20 investments between Fund 1 and the current fund, and are still making investments in the state of Arkansas and surrounding states as well. So let's talk about, and by the way, that's my email address and my mobile phone number. So be sure you grab a picture of that either now or at the end of the presentation. If I can ever do anything to help you guys as aspiring entrepreneurs, existing entrepreneurs, small business owners, whether you're here or there on Zoom, then be glad to do that. So just a few slides that I want to, or a few stats that I want to share with you about the importance of building a positive work culture. These were pretty staggering to me. I've always known intuitively the impact that building a work culture has, but just take a look at some of these and the organizations that put those stats forward. Organizations with strong cultures experience a 4x increase in revenue over organizations that have little to no or a negative work culture. Highly engaged teams produce 21% more profit, as reported by the Gallup organization. Companies with strong positive cultures have 30% higher customer satisfaction, 50% lower health-related costs, and 40% lower absenteeism. If we look at the converse of that, Weaker core cultures, greater than 3 times increase in employee turnover, right? So employee turnover is employees choosing to leave. This is voluntary turnover, employees choosing to leave an organization. So there's turnover where you quit and leave, and then there's disengagement where you quit and stay. Make sense? Little joke for you there, but not really. Disengaged employees cost organizations 34% more than their fully loaded annual salary. So if you take someone who makes, just call it $100,000, and they become disengaged, then that salary, that person really cost that organization $134,000 just in lost productivity, absenteeism, quality errors, and what have you. And then disengaged employees result in 49% more accidents and 60% more errors and defects. So any question about the degree or the impact that culture has on an organization? Every organization has a culture. It's just that some organizations, the culture is stronger and more positive than in other organizations. And we'll talk a little more about that as we go along. By the way, if you have questions, raise your hand and speak out. And the only reason I ask you to raise your hand is so if I'm speaking and then you speak out, I'm deaf and I can't hear. I'm not really deaf. I'm just hard of hearing and I can't hardly hear you. So raise your hand and let me know, and I'll be glad to address those questions. But I also want to have some time afterwards as well where you can ask questions. I've had the privilege of studying excellence at the individual, the team level, and the organizational level for much of my career. I came to UCA as a college freshman in 1985. Long time ago, go Bears. I tell people that I crammed a 4-year degree into almost 6 years. Another little joke. Thank you for laughing. I appreciate it. They're gonna kind of seed the laughter so that I don't have to hold an applause or a laughter time. Multiple different majors before I found what I thought was my calling. Ended up coming on a music scholarship. So I was all conference in football, but I was all state in band. And came here on a music scholarship. And after I washed out of the College of Business, literally, after I washed out of the College of Business, I decided that maybe I would major in music. I came here on a full ride music scholarship. I ought to have a little bit of talent. And that was proved wrong after I became a music major. And so 1 or 2 more majors, I finally left here with a degree in health sciences with a respiratory therapy major. I spent about 9 years on the helicopter team at Arkansas Children's Hospital called Angel One, 6 years of which I was a professor at UAMS, taught cardiopulmonary anatomy and physiology. I taught cardiorespiratory pharmacology, neonatal pediatric intensive care. But I really developed a liking for leadership. And as I was pursuing my graduate degrees, I ended up pursuing a doctorate in leadership and organizational behavior. And that's where I spent the majority of my academic pursuits. Even though I was at a health sciences university, I was studying the differences between top performers and average performers. We all know that the majority of the workforce is made up of that kind of middle 50 to 70% of people who are average. We have to have that group. But what I wanted to do was understand the differentiators between the top 1 or 2% of performers and kind of that middle 70%. So that's where I spent time studying excellence at an individual level in healthcare. Then a company down the street, publicly traded company at that time with about 5,000 employees called Axiom Corporation, called me to do that same research inside the company with database administrators, software developers, business administrators, and data analysts, and what have you. So I got the opportunity for the next 20 years or so to study excellence at the team level, not only at the individual level, but at the team level and the organizational level organizational level as well. And I had the opportunity to do that on 5 continents, across Europe, across the Middle East, South America, China, etc. Most organizations have some form of this. They're pursuing some form of a business strategy. They have some form of a reason for existing, or what's called a purpose or a mission, and they're very attuned to the mission, maybe less attuned to their business strategy, but they have some strategy. They just may not be able to articulate it very well. And they have a culture. But I actually follow a number of management thinkers, and I'll share a couple of those with you as we go through this presentation. The first of which is Peter Drucker, who says, culture will eat strategy for breakfast. In other words, it doesn't matter the quality of your go-to-market plan and your business strategy. If you don't have a positive work culture, it will consume your strategy for breakfast. Just literally consume it. And so that then begs the question that I like to ask, what exactly is culture? Okay. We're talking about work culture or business culture or company culture.
It's like the business environment.
The environment, okay?
I guess more deeper level, the emotional aura of
The emotional aura of a business or the environment. Yes, ma'am.
A group of people doing the same things the same way.
Okay, could be a group of people doing the same thing or how they approach work, right? What else?
Your business's personality.
Your business's personality. Yes, 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 and yes. It's all of those things. As I said, every organization has a culture. The question is, what does your culture say about your organization? It's the shared values, beliefs, attitudes, and behaviors that characterize an organization. It's the unwritten rules, norms, social patterns that shape how we interact with each other, how we interact with the work, how we go about doing the work. It's the collective personality, as Kristen said, of an organization that influences the overall work environment, how engaged, how productive employees are, and ultimately organizational success. So it's all of those things. All of those things make up the culture. There's also this concept called an espoused culture versus a culture in use. And many times the espoused culture of an organization, we characterize it in the list of core values. We put it on the wall. We say, this is what we believe. Shared beliefs, shared values, core values, all kind of synonyms for the same thing. But culture really goes beyond that. The shared values really describes kind of those collective behaviors, the way we behave. But everything having to do with a business says something about its culture. How it feels when I go in there as an employee, how it feels when I go home at the end of the day, how my leaders communicate with me, how I communicate with other people, how we approach, are we highly process oriented or are we just go get it done and don't really rely on process? All of those things have an effect on developing the culture of an organization. At the end of the day, culture is about behavior. It's about how humans behave inside an organization, both individually and collectively. That has the greatest impact on culture than just about anything else. As we've worked with hundreds of organizations over the course of the last 7 or 8 years, we have come to identify a number of elements that we have observed to drive what we call the culture of excellence. Strong leadership, clarity and focus, engaged and committed teammates, empowering communication, 100% accountability, and organizational agility. We're going to talk a little bit about those as we go through today. The first one I want to talk about is strong leadership. It's at the tip of the spear. Strong leadership. I have this definition of leadership on my wall that I have used for a number of years, and I tell folks that I have begged, borrowed, and stolen elements of every aspect of the definition, and I put it together in kind of a unique way so that no one could ever accuse me of plagiarism, and then I've even put my name on it as my own definition. But I really believe it defines at the core for me what leadership is, and it is this. It's the most important requirement. Leadership is the most important requirement for business and personal success. In simple terms, it's defined as the willingness to be held accountable for results and then to deliver on that responsibility no matter what the external circumstances, situations, or pressures.
Yeah.
That's leadership, right? The willingness to be held accountable results and then to do that no matter what. I tell the story of leading a team of people. We were responsible for about $100 million in revenue, our organization was. And we were projecting to come in 1%, 99 million is what we were projecting. We were going into the fourth quarter, and I kept pressing on the team, guys, we've got to find that extra $1 million. We've got to find that extra $1 million. One of my sales directors walked into my office, and he said, what we're talking about 99%. That is an A+ in anyone's book. What does it matter? My response to him was, I'll tell you what, go out on the floor out there and identify 7 people that at the end of the quarter, if we don't get that extra $1 million, you're willing to go tell them that they're going to go home and tell their families that they don't want to have a job. Because that $1 million fully loaded equated to about 7 people's fully loaded annual salaries. That's the difference that it makes. 99% is not an A+ in everyone's book. It is here, but in the real world, it's not, because many times plans are made based upon the 100%. And when we choose or when we fail to deliver the 100%, we have to take actions that are sometimes adverse to the organization. Make sense? As I was studying the differences between highly effective people, successful people, average performers within the organization, my research found only really kind of validated research that had been done by other researchers over the course of a number of years, is that academic credentials, certifications, letters behind one's name really don't make a difference, and they are not differentiators as it relates to performance in the workplace. For instance, to be the best dentist in the world, I have a threshold requirement, and that's to be a dentist. I can't be a dentist unless I'm a dentist, right? Unless I have the actual license, the academic degree and the license to be a dentist. But just because I have the academic degree and the license to be a dentist doesn't mean I'm going to be a dentist. There are a lot of other factors. And just like in any other profession, those factors can really be boiled down into the degree to which I can balance results with relationships. Stephen Covey, in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, written in the mid-90s, described it as the public victory, relationship, and the personal victory, results. His son, a few years later, wrote a book called The Speed of Trust, where he described it as character and competence. Competence being results behaviors, and character being more relationship-oriented behaviors. The Navy SEALs describe it as performance and trust. Being able to balance the two, performance and trust. I like to talk about results and relationships. You see, if I focus on results at the expense of relationships, I will be wildly successful very, very quickly. That is until I alienate everyone around me who's responsible for helping me maintain those results, and then I lose them both. If I focus on relationships at the expense of results, people will love me and I'll get a great reputation very, very quickly. That is until I demonstrate that I can't do what I say I'm going to do when I say I'm going to do it, and people lose respect for me, and I lose them both. I'm a results guy by background. That's kind of my natural bent, is to be results oriented. And I have had to surround myself over the years with people who were a little more relationship oriented than I, so that we could keep each other in balance. And so it really boils down to the degree to which one walks the tightrope, if you will, of results and relationships. An imbalance either way will produce less than optimal outcomes. Let's talk about engaged and committed teammates. How many of you have been on a team where you kind of felt like this before? Maybe there was a new team, there were no relationships really that existed among the teams, or they were very superficial. Maybe there wasn't clear direction. Maybe there was some floundering going on, but yet there was this rush to accomplish. Anybody? Yeah, good. So a couple of guys, John Katzenbach, The Wisdom of Teams, and Bob Fisher and Bo Thomas, both of whom are Conway, had Conway ties. Bob actually was here in the College of Business. Bo was an individual and organizational psychologist and a good friend of mine. They both authors conducted research on what it is that actually constitutes great teamwork. And Katzenbach has described what I believe is the best definition. Now, it's dated, 1993, but it has stood the test of time in my own experience of defining what a team actually is. Small number of people with complementary skills who are committed to a common purpose, a common performance goal, and a common approach for which they hold themselves mutually accountable. So we're on this team. We all are heading the same direction. We all are approaching that target with kind of the same style, so to speak, or having the same approach, and we're going to hold ourselves accountable for achieving that. In other words, you can't just put a bunch of people in a room together, have them working at cubes beside one another, and say, ding, ding, you're a team. You can do that, but you will fail to produce the results that you're expecting out of that team by just focusing on proximity. Then we look at Bob Fisher and Bo Thomas. They actually started doing their research in about 92, I believe it was, maybe even 90. And so they actually interviewed 5,000 teams and team leaders, team members and team leaders, asking them what was your best team experience, best team leader experience, best teamwork experience, and what was your worst team experience. They interviewed everyone from the Brigadier General of the U.S. Air Force fighter team, demonstration team, the Thunderbirds, I believe it is, all the way down to a secondary assistant principal in Arkadelphia Middle School, right? And everything else in between. And what they found was the 7 practices that world-class team leaders use to deliver outstanding results within organizations. Interestingly, anybody know the use of the term dream team? Where that came from? Here, what?
They used to.
Yeah, 1992, the U.S. men's basketball team won the gold, and I believe it was the cover of Sports Illustrated. They were the dream team, right? Well, they were doing the research at that time, and a few years later, when the book was ready to publish, they actually coined the title "Real Dream Teams" to say this is what really leads to extraordinary results. Number one, commitment to a mission. Sounds like Katzenbach, doesn't it? Commitment to a common purpose. Number two, you start to have this yin and yang that's taking place. Number one, you've got individual competency, but if you have a bunch of individually competent people without clearly defined and accepted roles, then you have people stepping all over each other. Highly competent people running around, stepping in each other's yards, so to speak, cutting each other's grass. Then you have this mutual respect and encouragement that goes one step further and says we're going to have win-win cooperation as well. And finally, empowering communication that leads to a winning attitude. And we're going to talk more about empowering communication as we go. Make sense about teamwork? Let's talk about clarity and focus for a moment. So if you remember, we said, all right, we've got leadership, this culture of excellence, leadership at the top. We've got engaged and committed teammates over to the left-hand side. And now down at the very bottom, we've got clarity and focus. We subscribe to a concept called strategic acceleration, which means if you want to accelerate the strategy of any organization, then you have to have clarity, you have to have focus, and you have to have the ability to execute. Think about that. As you're building a culture, you want your people embracing a common approach, because we know that that's what develops strong teamwork. And that common approach in the organizations that we work in are focused on trying to help them develop clarity, focus, and the ability to execute. Clarity is the ability to get crystal clear about who you are as an organization and where you're going. What are we trying to accomplish? Remember that common approach to a purpose and to a mission. Clarity about what that mission is and what the vision is, who we are and where we're going. Focus is like this laser-like guidance system that has us completely headed in the direction that we said we want to go. So think of it as a compass for an organization. Think of it as a heading indicator if you're a pilot, but it's this laser-like guidance system that says that's where we're going to go, a GPS perhaps. And then finally, execution, the ability to actually deploy resources against that direction. In other words, we're going to stop spending money and resources and putting people on this, and we're going to shift them over to do this because we're betting the farm on that GPS direction, so to speak. We have a strategic growth system that we use not only in our Conductor practice with our 10X Growth Accelerator, but also with our Innovation Junkie clients, where we basically walk them through having them answer these 10 basic questions. Those 10 basic questions really fall into kind of 3 overarching questions. Who are we? Where are we going? And how are we going to get there? Who are we? What's our purpose? Where are we going? What's our vision and strategy? And how are we going to get there? How are we going to actually make certain that we stay on track to getting where we said we're going to get when we said we're going to get there? Strong leadership, clarity and focus, engaged and committed teammates, and 100% accountability. Spend a little time talking about that. So you saw me put this definition up a few moments ago, and I had all of these key words identified in red, underlined, underscored, boldface maybe. I'm a military guy. I retired from the U.S. Army National Guard a few years ago. And so if you would have asked me when I was your age, when I was 30, young, early in my career, I would have said that leadership is an act of assertion. In other words, my responsibility as a leader is to hold my people accountable. Make sense? It's kind of militaristic, right? Yeah. As I have grown older and hopefully wiser, and if I let this grow out a little bit further, you can actually see the gray hair here. As I've grown older, wiser, and a little bit more gray-headed, by the way, I'm a peepaw now. I'm actually not a peepaw, I'm a grandfather. I refuse to be called peepaw. I have changed my perspective in what actually the role is of a leader in driving accountability. And I really describe it as more of this: the willingness to submit myself to being held accountable. So leadership is really more of an act of submission, in my experience now, after 30 years in the business, than it is an act of assertion. Make sense? Very good. It also is, accountability is developed when we know who's on first and who's on second, who's responsible for this and who's responsible for that. Grace and I worked together for about a year, with each of us doing each other's jobs and us just kind of tag teaming everything we did. And after about a year, we said, you know, there are some things that you really migrate toward and I really migrate toward. Why don't we just get in a room and let's just put them on a whiteboard and let's just list all the things that need to be done. And then why don't we put that in the middle and put Jeff over here and Grace over here, and let's start divvying these things out based upon our abilities, our interests, our natural tendencies, what needs to be done. And then, oh, by the way, whatever's left, whoever gets the short straws, we'll just figure out how to divvy that up, right? But the bottom line is, you have to figure out in your organization who's responsible for what. And the best way to do that is to, number one, figure out what the boxes are in your organization, the functions. These are very common functions within an organization. You've got someone who's responsible for the vision and strategy. You've got someone who's responsible for execution. You've got someone who's responsible for sales and marketing, for operations, for finance and administration. Those are very, very high level. Maybe you have to break out your sales and marketing. Maybe you have to break out your operations to operations and engineering, or manufacturing and engineering. Maybe you have to break out finance and administration to finance and HR. But the point is, you define for your organization, what are the boxes, and then what are the bullets that go in those boxes, and then who are the bodies that we put in there. And what you might find in a small organization is the person's name. So the owner of the business might be there, and there. That's okay. The point is, you've got one name per box. You never share a box. If you've got two names that need to go in a box, then you need to break those boxes apart. Say, okay, what is Sally going to do versus what is Billy going to do? Establishing accountability. Another aspect of establishing accountability is knowing what's important to measure, which we call key performance indicators. What do we need to be measuring in the organization to ensure that we stay on track to achieving the strategy that we're trying to achieve? And I want to say one more thing about accountability. Someone who submits themselves to being held accountable is the person who, when they sign up to do something by Thursday at noon, and they realize on Monday that that's going to be at risk because some other distractions have come into the business or some other priorities have presented themselves, the person with integrity, the person with accountability says, hey, as soon as he or she determines that they're not going to be able to do what they said they're going to do when they say they're going to do it, the person with accountability and integrity says, hey guys, I need you to understand I am at risk. I don't think I'm going to be able to do this by Thursday at noon. Do you have to have it Thursday at noon, or is there another alternative? The person without accountability waits until someone asks them about it on Friday or Monday following. It says, oh yeah, sorry, I didn't get it. Too many distractions. The same distractions occurred in the business. The same change of priorities occurred. The difference was the person who was willing to submit themselves being held accountable. So accountability is kind of an integrity issue. You know what the word integrity means? It means whole, literally whole. When I was a paramedic and we would have a patient who had a broken leg we would talk about the bone had lost its integrity, or when we write in a chart, or the skin had lost its integrity, it was broken, right? Think about to integrate something is to bring it together, right? To disintegrate is to blow it apart. So at its core, integrity, when our words match our deeds, we are whole. When our words don't match our deeds, we are broken. And accountability and integrity are pretty much synonymous in that regard. So let's talk about empowering communication. Another audience participation. How do you define the word empower? What does that mean?
Strength to get something done.
Strength to get something done. Okay.
Build something up.
To build something up. What else?
Give somebody confidence.
To give somebody confidence. Have you guys been reading my slides? I love that. It's great. The definition is to make someone stronger and more confident in controlling the events or circumstances surrounding them. When you empower someone, you make them stronger and more confident at dealing with the circumstances that they're facing. So by definition, to disempower someone is to make them weaker and less confident in dealing with the circumstances that they're facing. So think about this concept of empowering communication. When I was in junior high, I believe it was, and they taught us our first lesson on communication, they said communication has three parts. You've got the sender, you've got the receiver, and you've got the message. I only wish it were that simple today, because it looks really something like this. It looks much more like this than it does that. For instance, we've got all of these things going on in our heads and hearts, right? We've got the things that we believe, our core beliefs and our core values to us. We've got faith that is different based upon the individual. We've got lack of religious background in some instances as well, and it's just different. We've got these meta programs, these decisions that we've made in the past, and the impact those decisions have had on us, the repercussions, so to speak. We've got memories, we've got language barriers, we've got just time, space, matter, and energy. We've got all those things going on in our heads. We've got these meta programs, the self-talk, the programs that we're running in our heads at any given time. And so because of all of that noise, all that artifact, all that stuff, we have an enormous ability to distort, delete, and generalize words as we hear them. How many of you have ever gotten into an argument with someone and you parted ways and went, there you go, yeah, I have to. You parted ways and just separated for a while, and then when you came back together, you said something, you told that person, well, you said this about me, and they said, I didn't say that at all. Or perhaps they said, you called me this or that. I did not call you that. And those words never came up. We deleted, distorted, or generalized based upon all the stuff here, and even changed the words of the conversation because we believe in our heart of hearts that they said that to me, and they know good and well they did. So we've got things like the spoken words, things we actually say, breathed words, those things that we say under our breath, right? Facial expressions, body language, lack of communication, text and emails. How many of you have an enormous and uncanny ability to place emotion on written text, either in the form of an email, a letter, or a text message? We all do. We all do. One of our business partners up in Northwest Arkansas he's the best at saying, you know what, I'm going to assume positive intent until proven otherwise. And that's been a really good lesson for me. You get an email that might sound a little bit curt. You get a text message that might sound a little bit hasty or a little bit aggressive. You know, I'm going to assume positive intent until proven otherwise. And then I may pick up the phone and have a conversation. Hey, I just read that text. Just curious, you okay? Everything good? Assume positive intent until proven otherwise. So how do we have empowering communication on a day-to-day basis? One is to proactively build relationships. I mentioned Stephen Covey, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, the other day, a few moments ago, and he actually said that we should treat everyone we come into contact with as though they have an emotional bank account. So if you have a checking account or a debit account, I guess is what they're called today, and most of you don't. How many of you still write written checks? A few, okay, good. Most of the time it's a debit card or a Venmo account or something like that. If you If you take more money out of that account than you put in, what happens? You get overdrawn. What happens when you get overdrawn? It shuts down, right? The bank shuts down all future transactions. What happens when you put more money in than you take out? You can keep spending like a drunken sailor. Yeah. Well, imagine if someone has an emotional bank account, and when we make deposits, we're actually pouring into that relationship. When we make withdrawals, we are actually taking from that relationship. If we put in more than we take out, guess what? That relationship stays solid. If we take out, or they take out, more than they put in, or more than we take out more than we put in, then that relationship gets broken. Just like a checking account or a debit account at a bank. So we should be thinking about how do we make emotional deposits into people's emotional bank accounts. Actively listen to the spoken and the unspoken. Being the results-oriented guy I am, I'm the one who seeks first to be understood before seeking to understand, right? I've always said, if you disagree with me, clearly it's an ignorance issue. Spend a little time with me and I will get you over your ignorance. I'm speaking facetiously, obviously. But my point there is we should be, when we're in an argument, if we want to make someone stronger and more confident in dealing with the circumstances that they're facing, we should seek to understand before seeking to be understood. That's it. Submit ourselves to being held accountable for the highest quality at all times. Yep, yes, sir.
So when you're trying to engage with that lesson, but you're trying to build a relationship with someone who doesn't understand that, it becomes an issue. Have you ever had that happen?
When again
You're trying to seek first to understand and you're not feeling heard, kind of thing.
The bottom line is, when I suggest that you seek first to be understood before seeking, you seek first to understand before seeking to be understood, I'm not saying that you completely walk away from your own needs to be heard. What I'm suggesting is your default position, though, is, okay, let me understand where you are before I start trying to explain where I am. But there's still, for that relationship to stay intact, there still has to be a two-way exchange of information. And so the better way to do that is say, let me understand where you are, and then to turn around and say, now, may I share some feedback with you, or may I give you my perspective? Does that help? Very good. Assume positive intent until proven otherwise. I've talked about that one. Refuse to place intent, emotion, or tone on a written text, or email, or letter. Anybody write letters anymore? Yeah, me. And I love this one as well. Everything that's said must be truthful, but not everything that's truthful must always be said. Everything that's said must always be truthful, but not everything that is truthful must always. Think about that for a moment. Sometimes Jeff Standridge just needs to keep his mouth shut because his observation, albeit truthful, probably could go without being said. And it's only going to result in a negative outcome if he says it. Sometimes I need to seek first to understand myself before seeking to, or something there. Anyway, you get where I'm going. Organizational agility, that's the last one we'll finish up and catch a few more questions. I shared with you a few moments ago that I follow the great management thinkers of our time, Peter Drucker being one of them, who said culture will eat strategy for breakfast. The other one is Mike Tyson. Thank you. Who said that everybody's got a plan till they get punched in the mouth, right? Organizational agility is, okay, we've got a plan. We know where we're going. We've got a strategy. We know how we're going to get there. We know what our accountability metrics are. But guess what? Sometimes COVID happens. And COVID and the pandemic itself, coupled with an enormous amount of economic disincentive, if you will, resulted in people's strategic plans being rendered relatively useless. Take this weekend, for instance. Dr. Suter and I were talking before the presentation. There was a projection in the state that we were going to have a massive influx of visitors from other states for the eclipse weekend. I've spoken to at least 3 restaurateurs who said that they staffed up, they bought extra inventory in order to serve all those customers. Yet and they did that based upon the hype. In other words, they changed their normal course of operations. They changed their normal strategies, operating strategies, to really staff up and inventory up because of the hype. Yet the visitors didn't materialize according to the hype. Yet the hype also caused the locals to board themselves in their homes and stay away. And so those 3 restaurants, again, it's a sample size of 3, actually experienced a weekend that was down over a normal weekend by anywhere from 15 to 20%. Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And we have a number of people across the state of Arkansas, probably across the southwest to northeast part of at least a band of small mom and pop entrepreneurs who got punched in the mouth over the weekend. And so now they're finding themselves trying to recover. One of the things that we do to help our clients develop the ability to have agility is, number one, we make sure that we understand that accountability chart that we talked about, who's responsible for what. We try to breed this culture of accountability, 100% accountability, but we also put a meeting cadence around everything that we do as well. It says, okay, here's our plan. We're going to develop this plan, and it's going to be a 3-year plan, so to speak. By the way, I don't believe in anything much longer than 5-year strategic plans, just because the world changes too rapidly, depending on the industry. But virtually any industry that we're involved with, the world is so complex and it is changing so rapidly. 3-year, 4-year, 5-year strategic plan is a big plan. My own perspective, my own professional perspective. And so we build a 3-year plan, and then we actually have a very specific weekly meeting cadence, a quarterly meeting cadence, and an annual meeting cadence that makes certain that we are staying on track to that actual plan and that we are making adaptations to that plan as those adaptation necessities present themselves. Make sense? That gives us the ability to be more agile, to be more nimble, and to be able to make decisions on the fly about whether or not our plan is still relevant or not, versus waiting until something happens. The economy changes, the market changes, competition moves into town, or what have you. So, a lot of things that I covered with you about leadership and about building a culture of excellence, but I have some good news. And that good news is this, that at the end of the day, people follow people they know, like, and trust. People follow people they know, like, and trust. So relationships are very important. Being able to deliver results, equally important. But when we fail to deliver the results that we know we should deliver, we should keep in mind that we have to focus back on building those relationships as well. And the last thinker that I'm going to share with you is a guy by the name of Lou Holtz. Lou Holtz said, created what he called the do-right rule. And he said there are really only 3 questions, or 3 things that 3 rules that we need to live by the way. And those are, number 1, to do the right thing always. Do what's right. Just do what's right. The second one is to do everything to the best of our ability within the time that we have allotted, or the time that we have available. And the third thing is show people you care. And the reason he said that we really only need those 3 rules to live by is because everyone we come into contact with, they're asking 3 basic questions of us. Number 1, they're asking, can I trust you? Well, if I do the right thing always, then I'm proactively answering that question with all of my colleagues before they actually have to ask the question of me. Can I trust you? The second one is, are you committed to excellence? Well, if I've built a reputation for doing everything to the best of my ability within the allotted time available, and by flagging up when my commitments may be at risk because of unplanned circumstances, then not only have I answered the question that they can trust me, but I've also answered the question that, are you committed to excellence? Which is yes. And then the third question is, do you care about me? Well, if I'm always showing people I care, if I'm always doing things to the best of my ability for the team, for the organization, and for our clients, if I'm always doing the right thing, then I've proactively answered all 3 of those questions. And so there's a lot of the do's and don'ts that I talked about a few moments ago kind of take care of themselves over time. People basically want to know, do I feel like you have an authentic desire for my well-being? How many of you think that you may end up in a sales role sometime in your career. Anybody? Yeah. That right there is probably the most important sales advice I can give any salesperson, is to constantly work with your clients to make them feel as though, because it's true, you have an authentic desire for their well-being. What does that mean in a sales relationship? It means that I'm not going to sell you my product or service if I don't feel like you can actually use my product or service. I'm going to walk away from the sale out of respect for the relationship and the authenticity of the relationship before I try to sell you something you don't need or you can't use. Make sense? Very good. All right. Those are my contact details again. Let's talk. Questions? Yes, sir.
Suggestions for building a culture while
Building a culture while your team is small. So the question is, suggestions for building a culture while your team is small. Number one is what I was having we were talking about. Just 3, 5, something like that. Yeah. What I would suggest is that you take this information and share it with them, but that you all sit down as a team, and you don't have to start with core values. You can start with just norms. How are we going to behave as a team? Number one, who's going to be responsible for what? What are the boxes on our team? What are the bullets in each of those boxes? And then what are the standards of behavior that we're going to all commit to? We're going to all show up for team meetings. We're going to start on time. We're going to end on time. We're going to commit to the results that we've signed up for. And if we can't deliver them, we're going to bring it to the team before we just let the deadline fly by. Whatever those norms of behavior are. What I would say is you start there. Boxes, bullets, and bodies, and then norms. Very good. Who else?
Marisha.
Yes, ma'am.
In the time that you've spent working with all these different companies that you've gone and researched for, have you noticed a disconnect between what they have written and what they say this is our culture versus once you get in there and see it, you're like, this is a complete 180 from what you have.
Absolutely. It's called the espoused culture versus the culture in use. In other words, I have seen grandiose vision statements and core values pasted on the walls all around the organization. And they talk about how we're going to take care of each other, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. But so that's the espoused culture. I've even seen organizations that actually have a culture book where they write culture down, which I highly advocate, by the way, and they publish it for all employees. They get it to their customers. But you go spend a day, and sometimes it's across the entire organization. It's pervasive. More common than not, it's pockets within the organization, either a geography, or maybe a department, or a unit, or a floor of a building, where the culture in use is not consistent with the espoused culture. In other words, the culture that we say we have is one thing, but the culture that actually exists is something different.
And how would you go about fixing that?
So the first thing, and I'm actually working with an organization in Northwest Arkansas right now, where they have acquired another organization that is almost the size of the parent organization, 40% or so, or 80% or so of the size of the organization. And so what we are doing is we're doing an actual cultural assessment of the parent organization and the acquired organization. And so we're going to look at where do we have cultural issues. And you can do that doesn't have to be an acquisition. You can do that. You got to flag up where are the issues, but then you have to start addressing them. But the way you prevent that from happening, so we're talking about fixing it. The way you prevent that from happening is you are very clear about your espoused culture, the culture you want to create, your core values, your behavioral norms, all the other things, and you use that to hire people. You use that to fire people. If you're not willing to terminate someone who consistently violates a core value, it's not a core value. It's a flowery statement on a wall that nobody believes, right? So you hire according to it, you fire according to it, you coach according to it, you train according to it, you promote leadership according to it. So before you make leadership appointments, you ask, how well do they match the culture of the organization? How well do they embody that?
Awesome.
Very good. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. It's kind of like the young man said, when you're starting up a business and you're small and it's only the owner and then one other person, how do you get more business to your business when you're constantly doing the back office work and trying to make sales, and the work that you have is only a part-time work because you really don't have the money yet to invest in a full-time worker?
That's a great question. I will tell you in the work that I have done with salespeople that the difference between a top performing salesperson and a less than top performing salesperson, there are a lot of similarities between them. In other words, a top performing salesperson and an average to low performing salesperson has the same degree of call reluctance. In other words, their fearfulness of calling someone and asking for their business, right? They experience the same degree of distraction or reasons why they can't go call on 10 potential new customers. Got to get these quotes out. I got to get these invoices out. I got to get all this back office stuff done. The difference between the top salespeople and the average, the only one that I can really pinpoint is that the top salesperson blocks it on their time religiously and sets a target goal of I'm going to see this many people a week and this many people a day. And if it's quitting time and I'm 3 people short, guess what? It ain't quitting time. I'm going to stay the course and see those 3 more people because that's the goal I set for myself. That is the only difference I've been able to find because even the best salespeople find all kinds of reasons why they don't have time to go sell. Okay. Yep. Yes, ma'am.
Do you think there's anything unique that we do on our team that creates positive work culture?
Yes, you don't let me lead, you let Grace lead. I do. I think we genuinely care about each other. I think we genuinely like to have fun together. I'm probably more prolific than the rest, but we're constantly back and forth on a group text with one another, whether it's raunchy dad joke. What?
Was it just constantly back and forth?
Yeah, whether it's groaner dad jokes or whatever. I think we generally care about each other, enjoy being around each other, and that actually spills over into the workplace. And Grace and I have talked about this. We're very, very cognizant of that when we are posting new positions and hiring people, and we're constantly thinking about the core values and the work environment that we like to create. So, great question. Yes, sir.
Dr. Standridge, I have a comment and a question.
Okay.
Comment.
Keep your comments brief and we'll take your question.
When I was a graduate assistant, I worked for the person who was Stephen Covey's graduate assistant.
I love it.
And so I can give you a lot of background.
I'm sure.
About the nature of that work.
Absolutely.
Question, you talked a lot about accountability and responsibility.
Yeah.
Let's talk about impression management.
Okay.
What kind of advice might you give for people to manage the impression that they give of themselves so that they're communicating high levels of accountability and responsibility?
Audit your social media to start. I posted a position for a company that I'm involved in the other day. I got 20 resumes overnight. The very first thing that I did was went and audited their social media to call them into number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. And I got rid of about half of them. So that's kind of number 1. Audit your social media. And I'm not saying you can't, go look at my social media. I'm goofy, right? I'm putting goofy stuff out there all the time. But it's also consistent with my brand. I'm goofy, right? But just think about the impression. Think about what you're sharing. Think about the impression that you're creating. Number 1. Number 2, every interaction you have with someone, particularly a person of influence, a potential employer, a business colleague, a potential client, every interaction you have with them, you either build your reputation with them, the trust, the confidence they have in you, or you erode it. There's no middle ground. You either walk away with more influence or less influence. Seldom, if ever, do you walk away with the status quo. So thinking about, when you're interacting with folks. Number 3, we work with entrepreneurs and startup tech-oriented entrepreneurs. There's not a lot of focus on attire. And so I just have to dress a little bit better than that, right? They say that if you dress like you're in the audience, then one of these days you'll end up in the audience, right? No joke for you, by the way, but it's kind of got some truth to it, right? If you dress like you're in the audience, you'll end up in the audience, right? So I always try to be just one notch above my client. Just one notch. Not vastly different. I don't wear a tie, But if I'm going to come and speak in front of a group, I'm probably gonna have, a jacket on. That's just me. I'm not saying everyone has to do that. I'm not gonna wear a tie, probably not gonna wear, jeans with holes in them, because I'm constantly thinking about what's the impression that I'm leaving these folks with. So that helps. So audit your social media, recognize that every interaction you're either building your influence or you're eroding it. And then number three, just think about your dress and your appearance as you approach. Very good. I thought I saw a hand over here somewhere. Did I? Maybe not. Anything else? One more question before we cut you loose. Going once? Going twice? Thank you guys. My email, my mobile number, if I could do anything for you guys, please